Hello, and welcome to the Cinema Gold podcast. I'm your host, Larry Lace. Today, we're diving in to our weekly series, Somehow I Manage, a review of The Office. And today marks the very end of our series as we reach Season 9, the final season for one of the best shows on TV. There was no ordinary television series and no ordinary season. After 9 years on the air, The Office has become a part of cultural lexicon. There's character catchphrases and references from the series that we use more often than we even realize in our everyday lives. Though the series premiered to soft ratings, the U.S. adaptation of The Office became the highest rated scripted show on NBC. In its second season, amassing a devoted fan base and inspiring a massive positive critical response. That response, the ratings and fan enthusiasm has declined over the years, but the legacy of this show lives on for years to come. There are many who contend that the series was, in essence, over following Steve Carell's departure in season 7. Others feel that The Office really lost its mojo after season 5. And those that remained devoted throughout last season's bittersweet end. Whatever the case may be, most of us have been exposed to this show directly or peripherally for nearly a decade. Greg Daniels and his team had somewhat of an uphill battle coming into the final season of The Office. Ratings had plummeted, key cast members had scheduling conflicts during production, and the uncertainty of The Farm, a spinoff, created a need for a more fluid approach to Dwight's arc. They were also faced with a loyal viewership that was resistant to many of the new additions and calling for the return of Michael. How were the various moving pieces handled? Well, it was rough going for a time, but in the end, everything coalesced into a satisfying conclusion, which is no easy feat. We're coming off the highs of last season's finale, and looking back, most of the bumps that the show hit in its final season were corrected by the time that lights went out on Dunder Mifflin Forever. Some of the characters' storylines were past rescuing by the time that Dwight's wedding rolled around. And as we've mentioned previously, Andy has often been used as a plot device on this series. Dramatic story needs have often been the name of the game when Andy was concerned versus real character logic. As such, he's been kind of a schizophrenic presence on the series. He was a Dwight stand-in for Jim at the Stanford branch, and then when it became clear that Michael was in fact exiting, Andy was crafted into somewhat clumsily crafted Michael clone replacement. This season saw a return to Andy's original form in terms of his irrational behavior and general selfish disregard for others. The character became impossible to like upon his return from the high seas. And then the show did a complete 180 in the ensuing episodes in the hope that he would once again, and very rapidly, win our hearts and sympathies. The hiccups in terms of his development were exacerbated by Ed Helms' scheduling conflicts. Andy did have a nice moment in Living the Dream with the acoustic guitar session and seemed to find some legitimate happiness in the post-Baby Wah Wah fallout. He was even granted one of the sweeter talking head moments in the finale, saying, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days when you're in them." But on the whole, his arc felt flat. It may have been better to let him drop into the background even more and join the support team for this season. As to the secondary characters, as I mentioned, many fans have taken issue with new additions Nellie, Clark, and Plop. But to me, they weren't overly distracting. In fact, Clark seemed to hit his stride on the series in the latter portion of the season. The Aaron-Pete romance never really took off and was just a convenient way to give those characters something to do. But again, they faded away more than becoming a detractor. The long-lasting support cast were all given moments to shine, both throughout the season and in the finale. Oh, Creed, how we will miss you now that you're in the clink. Their roles remained essentially what they have been through throughout the life of the series. They add texture to the world and periodically come forward to take center stage. Season 9 saw an interesting turn in Angela and Oscar's relationship. Their evolution and their dynamic from snippy co-workers to embittered romantic rivals to bickering but endearing odd couple / co-parents was one of this season's strongest arcs. Angela has always been a tough nut in some respects, but she's also been one of the more complex characters in the series, which makes her an ideal match for Dwight. The writers edged the line of obnoxious with Angela in the terms of her behavior for the bulk of her marriage to the senator. They then attempted a rapid and imperfect course correction with the Angela's downfall storyline. There were some logical breaks. It didn't make a whole lot of sense that Angela was suddenly destitute when she had been perfectly capable of supporting herself in the same job before she met the senator, even if she wasn't able to get a divorce settlement that quickly. However, the cold bath of reality did wonders to get her where she needed to be, repentant, open-hearted, and with Dwight. As has been mentioned previously, Dwight had long been one of my most beloved characters. Yes, you got Jim and Pam, Ryan, Dwight, all of them, but Dwight truly is one of my most beloved characters. The series has done a tremendous job in terms of the slow, steady, and generally well-constructed evolution of his character, and his relationship with Pam and Jim in particular. Like Angela, Dwight is a delicate balance. If he were to ever truly become sane and rational, he would lose all of his humor. Yet, they also need to become less annoying and far less malicious in order for us to relate to and have affection for him. Jim and Pam. Whoa, boy. The Jim and Pam storyline stirred the most controversy this season. We've talked about the hits and misses of their troubled in paradise foray this season at length. The documentary crew coming out from behind the proverbial curtain was an understandable risk for the writers to take, but it didn't truly pay off. Nothing revelatory or beneficial ultimately emerged from that experiment. The majority of the audience responded negatively to Brian the Boom Guy, not because he was a threat to Jim and Pam's dynamic, but because that character was a cheap trick, one not befitting the series or that relationship. He was a plot device tossed in to make us think that Pam may leave Jim in a shortcut on the part of the writers. The Pam and Jim relationship is one of the most well-conceived and executed on television. As we've said, it is simultaneously entirely relatable and epically romantic. They've always dealt with things in an understated manner. Though so to go Twilight Love Triangle, The 11th Hour, was almost a smack in the face to fans. It felt as though we were being written down to. Okay, this will really get them going. It would have been better for the series to trust in us, the audience, and know just that everyday stresses of life were enough for us to believe in their marital struggles. In the end, though, The Office came through. Sacrifices were made on both fronts, as were grand gestures of endearing love. We wanted a happy ending we could believe in, and we got one. And here's a short synopsis of our thoughts of the finale, which is definitely the best episode of the season. Michael's brief return was a disappointment for some, but in truth, he already said his farewell to this series. After a 2-year absence, Steve Carell felt it wasn't fair to overshadow those who had remained. It was good to see him, great to see him, but Carell did the noble thing by allowing the rest of this cast their moment to shine. Overall, this season was rocky and may have benefited from a shorter episode order. It's true that we wanted to see some of the callbacks and swan songs for the guest stars and side characters that have been a part of this series over the years. But fewer episodes may have paved the way for a more streamlined final season and tighter story structure. Having said that, even with the hurdles that the writing and producing team had to overcome, they managed to deliver, particularly in those last few episodes. A conclusion that this long-running, beloved, and highly significant series deserved. The best way to describe how I felt about The Office's conclusion, as well as the series on the whole, I laughed, I cried, Michael, and happy. And right now, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Poddex, for sponsoring this episode. Visit poddex.com and use 10% off your purchase using promo code CinemaGold to save 10% off your purchase. And now we're going to look at the best cold openings. At number 5 is Jim bites his lip, talking about sports with Dell and Kevin. He tries to not let it bother him, but he later storms out of an interview in annoyance. Number 4, Oscar admits he's having an affair with the senator, and Kevin overhears. And number 3, Dwight discovers an old prank established by Jim a long time ago, leading to a wild goose chase through the building. Sort of Indiana Jones prank. At number 2, Dwight puts a jack-o'-lantern on his head, but gets it stuck. And the best cold opening, I think, of season 9 is Asian Jim.
Morning, Dwight. Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Jim. We've been working together for 12 years. Weird joke, Dwight.
You're not Jim. Jim's not Asian.
You seriously never noticed? Hey, hats off to you for not seeing race.
All right then, Jim. Why don't you tell me about that sale that you made yesterday?
Wellington Systems sold them 10
Yeah, this
cases
is
of
one of my
24
favorite
letter stock. Or were you talking about Krieger Murphy?
cold openings,
Because I didn't
but
go
also
that far.
favorite
But I'm
prank
hoping I've
between
got a
Dwight and
voicemail
Jim.
from Paul Krieger waiting for me.
Please enter your password.
I love how Dwight starts to freak out.
You have one new
How
message.
did you? No. That is sensitive information only for employees,
work
not
here.
outsiders.
Dwight, cut it out. I'm trying to work.
You don't work here. You're not Jim.
Jim, I got us that dinner reservation. Greek goes 7:30.
Oh, great. Can't wait.
Jim's at the dentist this morning, and Steve is an actor friend of ours.
I don't know who you are, but you are not Jim.
He
This
picks up the
is
picture.
Jim.
This is good. The hell?
Oh, dude. Oh, how did...
So my favorite episodes of season 9. Number 5 is Work Bus. This is probably my God knows how many times, 10th time watching The Office all the way through. And I didn't realize until this time that this episode was directed by Bryan Cranston. The only time he directed an Office episode. And it's a pretty good episode. To escape the radon filled office, Dwight arranges for a work bus while a building gets fixed. Their interactions that take place on the bus are pretty memorable, especially the Shibuya roll call. Oh my God, that drove me insane after watching it so many times. But Kevin's response is too funny. My name is Kevin. Yeah, that is my name. Yeah, they call me Kevin. Yeah, because that's my name. And who could forget about the bus picking up a hitchhiker who claims he's playing hooky from work, and it turns out to be Creed. I also like how Jim and Dwight, Andy and Nellie each work out their differences with each other by the end of the episode. It just gives us an overall good feeling. Not a bad episode considering it's one of the 2 seasons without Michael Scott. And Suit Warehouse. This one had a lot of funny and enjoyable moments in it. Dwight and Clark going on a sales call, posing as a father and son duo. It has a lot of really funny moments, especially one once the two pretend to be a father and son who didn't get along. When the office gets a new espresso machine, everyone in the office decides to taste test every flavor. So of course, they all start bouncing off the walls with energy. Those were funny scenes as they tear up the carpet. Aaron freaks out about the pen shipment, and everyone is sweating profusely. Lastly, Daryl interviews for the athlete job in Philadelphia, and things get really funny when he shoots the basketball, misses, and crashes it into the fish tank, killing the fish. This is a good episode. even though it's missing some key characters of the series, like most of the season 9 episodes. And number 3, Living the Dream. This is the first of the final 3 episodes that close out the series. Starting with this one, mood shift has definitely taken place. You can just feel how it's all coming to an end, like all 3 episodes are one big finale. This is a great episode that really makes you feel good after watching it. It was cool to see Dwight finally get his black belt, but after all those years of training, it was a nice nod to a season 2 episode that made a big deal over him being a purple belt. His black belt presentation in the office was hilarious also. To further extend his big day, he was finally named the new branch manager of Dunder Mifflin Scranton, ending the long-running ambition of his throughout most of the series. It was a very nice moment to see, and you feel like Dwight is finally mature enough for the job. Then, after many season 9 episodes that made you wonder if Jim and Pam were going to get a divorce, it was nice to see they finally figured things out and Jim taking a leave of absence from his Philly job. They are once again the couple that they should be. And Jim and Dwight finally become friends in this episode, putting aside years and years of their rivalry. Dwight names Jim the assistant to the regional manager, which is very cool. Pays homage to the earlier season's joke. While their rivalry was very, very fun to watch throughout the series, it was awesome seeing the two team up for the last 2 episodes. Lastly, for me, the most memorable part of this episode is Andy's goodbye. After he comedically burns the bridge with the company to pursue his career in entertainment, he gives a heartfelt rendition of Sarah McLaughlin's "I Will Remember You" on the guitar. That scene gets me every time because the entire office is touched by his really good and heartfelt performance, just as us, the viewers, are. Like I said, this feels like part 1 of the series finale, with even bigger things to come in the next 2 episodes. And at number 2, I put AARM, the assistant to the assistant regional manager. It's tough to rate extremely sentimental episodes like this because it's not classic The Office, but it's a great episode that makes you feel really good after watching. This one feels like a series finale in every way possible. And honestly, if this was the last episode, everyone would be happy. It feels like everything is wrapped up, especially when everyone is together at Poor Richard's at the end, watching the premiere episode of The Office, an American Workplace. In the closing scenes, the scene with Jim showing Pam exactly how he feels by playing the DVD from the camera crew while he's giving Dwight the advice to chase after love is everything in this episode. It was the perfect way to wrap up all loose ties created from a rocky relationship between Jim and Pam throughout season 9. Then Dwight getting engaged to Angela was very special as well. And you can't forget Daryl getting his proper goodbye from everyone in the office by choosing to dance. That was cool because it showed just how much everyone in the office really cares for each other, whether they ever showed it or not. The scenes toward the end of this episode were really sentimental and emotional, and a great ode to the fans of this series, who always felt like they were in the office themselves as co-workers. And the best episode of the season, hands down, sadly, is the finale of the great series. Where to begin? I love this series finale episode. It's a great way to wrap up a great TV series. It's more of a reunion episode. It takes place a year after the previous episode, the same weekend that Dwight is getting married to Angela, and the PBS documentary panel featuring all the main characters from The Office. It's interesting to see where everybody ended up and how they were doing. It felt like you were actually catching up with real friends after a long absence. There were several big moments in this episode, including Erin meeting her parents for the first time, Dwight and Angela getting married, Ryan and Kelly running off into the sunset together, Jim and Pam moving to Austin to pursue athlete, and perhaps the biggest anticipated question of all leading up to the finale of Michael Scott making one last appearance. There were several other big moments as well, and the last scenes that took place in the office were the perfect way to end the series. Everyone hanging out, reminiscing, and making profound statements into the camera that showed what an impact the office made on their lives. probably the greatest line of all time in this series. And in this episode is from Andy saying, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. And Pam's final line of, there's a lot of beauty in an ordinary things. Isn't that the kind of the point? Pam's line captures the essence of what The Office is all about. And now we get to hand out some Dundies for the final time. The worst episode of season 9 was the Here Comes Trouble episode. Andy was a big mess this entire season. While in other seasons he was often annoying or clueless, he was never a complete jerk. In this season, he went downhill in a big way. In this episode, Andy's a cappella group, Here Comes Trouble, comes to Dunder Mifflin. This leads to Andy being jealous when Broccoli Rob has been hanging out with the group. This episode just showed how pathetic Andy had really become and was overall annoying. Focusing so much on Andy in this season was a mistake. But, like I've said before, the best episode of season 9 is the finale. Without a doubt, the best episode was the finale. This episode was highly emotional and was a good send-off for the show that fans could appreciate. This episode occurs a year after the documentary airs. Seeing everyone come back together for Dwight and Angela's wedding was sweet and emotional, especially Michael Scott's return. Seeing the employees at Dunder Mifflin and Scranton go their separate ways was touching. Pam surprises Jim with a big gesture of selling their house so they can move for Athlete. Dwight is the manager of the office. It's a fitting end for the show. And the best moment of season 9 is probably my favorite episode too. Pam's experience of deja vu and moving on when she meets a potential manager in Philly who is the real estate version of Michael Scott. While Bob Odenkirk couldn't replace Steve Carell, he does elevate everything he's in, and he gives the fans a dose of the insensitive, pop culture quoting manager they've been missing. Which I'd love to see him possibly show up again in a revival of the show, if they ever do that. This season, so best character of season 9, probably Jim and Pam. Showed us the true struggles Pam and Jim had as a married couple living apart from each other. But through the end, we saw they were able to stay together and survive being a couple. So what were your favorite moments about this show? You can be a part of the show. Send us a voicemail, 682-305-0483. Also, the number is on your screen right there. Let us know what you thought on the show. Send us a voicemail. What were your favorite moments, pranks? What did you think of the show as a whole? Did you quit watching it 3/4 of the way through like a lot of people did, or did you actually watch the entire series? You can follow us on Twitter at CinemaGold2 and find us on Facebook at CinemaGold Movies. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.